Welcome to the Rising Up Post Show on FoxLA.com. I'm Christine Devine. In night 3 of our documentary, among the issues, the parallels between last summer's protests and the LA riots of 1992 began the conversations happening right now on the future of policing. As every night, we are joined by a panel, so we welcome them now. Hello, Laura King, daughter of the late Rodney King and founder of the Rodney King Foundation. Always nice to see you. And of course, I interviewed your father back in the 1990s. Thank you, Laura, for being with us. And we also have Dr. Georgia Leap, Executive Director of UCLA's Health and Social Justice Partnership. And I should tell you, I saw you on the panel with the YWCA about a year ago. So
oh, okay.
I know about your works. And Captain Aaron McCraney of the LAPD Recruitment and Employment Division, we thank you. And you and I have done a number of stories together over the past year, so thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's start with, y'all watched that episode there. Laura, let me start with you. Your reaction as you watched it, and I know we've talked before about seeing your father on that video.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, first of all, I just commend you guys for doing this because this is so needed. It's so needed. And it's like, it's still hard to watch because we're still here. Even besides my dad, past 30 years, it's like we're still here. We're still in the ignorance of having this conversation, going through this. It's just sad. It really is.
Well, it's a tough documentary to watch. We're doing 5 days of it. And Dr. Leap, let me go to you now because you've been doing social justice work for a long time now. As you watch that video, how was it to take that in?
You know, it was a combination of watching a home movie that I was sorry to be watching again. And I also thought of what Dr. Jordi Armour said. It's Groundhog Day. Why are we watching this again and again? And I've also got to say to Laura King, we think of your father so much. I could never imagine your own loss. And he is someone I think many of us in Los Angeles still hold in our hearts.
Thank you for that. Captain McCraney, I know your story well. Born and raised in LA. You came on the department in 1991. You were there on the streets in 1992 during the riots. How was it for you to go back and look at that story?
You know, it's tough. You know, it's tough. You know, I agree with the other panelists when we talk about, you know, how much time has passed and that we're still, you know, looking at and dealing with these issues. You know, as you mentioned, when I first came on, you know, right about that time and experienced the things that were going on. The only thing, you know, that I would like to, if I could add to the piece, is that I don't believe that that truly represents Los Angeles today. It doesn't represent the LAPD that I know, that I've worked for the last 30 years and the experiences that I've seen. But by no means do I want to discount, you know, the history and what happened for Mr. King, his family, and the city at that time.
Captain, can you share what it was like for you to be there as an officer on the job that day or that week?
Yeah, well, you know, things were hectic, things were crazy. You know, especially when we had the unrest of '92. You know, as you mentioned, I'm from the city, and I've never seen anything like that. You know, I worked Wilshire Division at that time, and to see the fires going on, you know, right across the street from my station, to see, you know, the activity as far as, you know, the looting and things like that. It was a very different time, and it was a very different space, you know, for me to be in, especially, you know, one who is, this is, you know, my heart and you know, my life has been here in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm. I got to think, we all have been inspired to do the work that we do from the things that we live through. I was a young rookie reporter. I'd been in LA since 1990, so I was a young one there on the streets as well, working. Dr. Leap, let me ask you a question. How did what you've seen in all these 30 years inspire the work you want to do today?
Quite honestly, I have devoted myself to lifting up community voice, resident voice, and making sure that there is equal partnership with the police, which is not always easy to do. It is what was so upsetting about recent events and with what happened in Minneapolis that affected people here is that trust is so easily shattered. And there have been, and I'm sad to hear, there have been 100 police shootings since George Floyd, where people wound up dead. and certainly some of them were justified or would be reported as justified. My work for 3 decades has been about how to give the community power, how to give the community voice in what has affected so many lives. And I'm going to tell you something. We don't need another research study. And that sounds funny coming from somebody like me, but we don't need any more research studies. We need change. We need real change with public safety and within our communities so that people can feel safe.
Captain McRaney, you are in charge of hiring right now. You are screening the academy class that's coming in soon. You have an academy class right now. How are you inspired by the 30 years on the job?
Well, so here's the thing. I think that, I take my role, my position very seriously. I understand that the decisions that I make today as far as hiring is going to affect generations. The people that I hire today, they'll be around for the next 20, 30, maybe more years. And so it's very important, that I make the right decisions and I'm very careful in my selection. And that's why I think it's important to have one thing that we're really pushing for in the department is diversity. And I know there's a lot of talk where people want to defund the police, they want to abolish the police. And I think, that's the wrong message. I think what we do is that what we need is more inclusion. We need more African Americans. We need more Asian American Pacific Islanders. We need more women on the job. And I think that's the thing that's going to really help to erase, the ills of the past and move forward for the future.
I just want to note that my panel tomorrow is going to be talking a little bit about that push for women, which is a 30 by 30% women nationwide by the year 2030 in law enforcement. But stand by, panel. It is now about 6:30. We want to welcome in any television viewers who are just joining us. Tonight's episode of Rising Up looked back at the parallels between George Floyd and Rodney King, also introduced the conversation about police reform. So let's take a look.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Lawrence M. Powell, Timothy E. Wind, Theodore J. Brasino, Stacy C. Kuhn, not guilty.
When the Simi Valley jury acquitted the 4 officers, America's promise of impartial justice seemed flagrantly flouted to many Angelenos.
So there's the thought, these officers, of course, are going to be convicted because it's actually on video. When they're not, then years and years and years of anger pours into the street, and we see actual riots for days and days.
Here come the cops. Here comes the cops. They're trying to flag them down.
As I'm flagging down the police, and there's other people flagging down the police.
All right, here they come.
It's amazing how things happen and they become slow motion. Because as I saw the officers going past me towards this woman and this man, in the back of my mind, I started thinking, oh, please, no. No, 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 no.
No, they're fine.
They're good.
Oh, gosh.
Oh,
gosh.
no.
So we continue our conversation with UCLA, from UCLA, Dr. Georgia Leap, and two with a different perspective on the 1992 riots. And Captain McRaney, I want to start with you as we roll some video of you the day you graduated from the police academy in 1991. And as we roll that video, Fox 11 was there. I want to ask you why you wanted to be an officer in the first place.
Well, just as I mentioned on that video back then, I just had a meeting yesterday with our board of police commissioners, and that question came forward. They asked, why would anybody want to be a police officer in this day and age? And I go back to the thing that I said back then, the thing that I've heard for the last 30 years, and it's about service. It's about giving back to the community. I truly believe, in the heart of police officers, that is why most of them come on this job. And that was the same for me.
And we saw your family there. It must have been an important day for you, obviously. Let's come back to our panel now. Laura King, I'm going to go to you and talk about the work that you're doing now. And I know a lot of it has to do with scholarships and giving back during a pandemic.
Yes. The I Am King Scholarship is dear to my heart because it highlights African American fathers, and it basically takes a load out of them so they don't have to take out of their household to just fund a day out with their kid. And it actually builds self-esteem within kids, because quality time with a parent, let alone a father, and I can say that because I'm a mother, a father is the most important role in a child's life. And the media and everybody does the opposite with African-American men. They portray them as angry, upset, and it's like, wait, I know plenty of dads. I know plenty of single dads that are amazing people. So we just wanted to highlight that. And we do workshops with bridging the gaps with the police department, because it's like, I don't personally believe in defunding the police because they have families. I have about 4 solid friends that are police officers. That gives me hope. Other than that, it's like, oh, here we go again. So those particular people give me hope. Like, we can get along one day. We can be equal. Other than that, it's just like, a ripple effect, you know? So I think that all those things have a major point in society. It's like, I like to look at it as we're all this part of this puzzle piece, right? And it's like, without you, without me, it's incomplete. Without this color, that color, this size, imagine if we all looked alike, then we'd all be robots. What good is that? So I think if we really, with the foundation, we try to focus on our differences and bring them together, like cultural awareness, uncomfortable conversations, because that's where we truly grow at, not common denominators. It's like, well, okay, let's get into the heart of things. Let's get into why because we're all raised different. Yeah. And so if we learn how to have those uncomfortable conversations, imagine what we would be. You know, it's just like.
Let me go to Dr. Leap, because I see you nodding your head there. Let me go ahead and ask you about your work and your thoughts on moving forward.
You know, I've done work with so many different groups with Project Fatherhood that lifts up the roles of fathers, both Black and of color. I've done work at Homeboy Industries for nearly 2 decades, charting the course of people who were in gangs, who remade their lives. And what I see now that upsets me and concerns me is we're not talking to each other. And I think what Laura just said was so profound. And I'm very concerned in Los Angeles, as well as nationally, that we're all staying in our little groups. We're not having dialogue with one another. And in my social justice work, in my research, I've never seen a time like this. And I am deeply concerned, as I said, about community voice, about former gang members, about fathers, about people who remake their lives. But they need to be talking to police officers, and police officers need to be talking to folk like Laura, and Laura needs to bring in her community to the gangs. And instead, a lot of us, not all of us, but a lot of us are staying in our little echo chambers. And I am so frightened when I see this amazing 5-part series. I've watched all 3 nights. It's been extraordinary. I look at the history of Los Angeles. I think about our echo chambers right now, and I am concerned about the way forward, because I know we've got community strengths and I know we've got resilience, but this must change.
Captain McRaney, one of the stories that you and I did together was on a panel that you meet with of community leaders to talk about their concerns and their issues and their thoughts as you're doing the hiring for the future officers. Go ahead and talk about, if you can, what you think are the strengths of the LAPD.
Well, you know, Christine, what I like to say is that, and going back to what Ms. King said and Dr. Lee said, you know, I'm African American, I'm a father, I'm a police officer, I'm from Los Angeles, and, you know, I think in many ways I represent many people here. And, you know, as I wind down my career, you know, I so much look forward. That's why I work recruitment. That's why I'm in hiring, because I'm looking for those who are going to come behind me and those who are going to take my place and take the place, you know, of others. We've seen, you know, in the late 80s and the early 90s, we had a big hiring push. And we had, you know, several people that were hired, and many were of African-American descent. And those people are now retiring, and we have not replaced them at the numbers, you know, that will ensure that we will continue to be there at, you know, right now we're at 9%, which we, you know, it's on par with the city, but I want to see us go, you know, well beyond that. And, you know, I would welcome, you know, anybody out there to help us out. I welcome this panel, Dr. Lee, Ms. King. You know, let's come together. You know, it is about the community and the police coming together to make progress. So, you know, I put the call out. You know, now is the time. Now is the perfect time with everything that's going on to come together and figure out how policing should be for the future of Los Angeles.
Dr. Lee, I'd like you to weigh in and go ahead and share. Go ahead.
I'm raising my hands because I deeply appreciate what Captain McRaney is saying. I deeply appreciate a lot of the efforts at the LAPD, like the Community Safety Partnership led by Deputy Chief Amata Tingarides. And I've also got to point out, hiring and a diverse hiring pool is not enough, because I have been on the street when I have seen Black officers and officers of color. They've actually been they've been harder. They've been, in certain cases, more brutal on their own community members. And sometimes I think there is a case of overcorrecting. And I also am going to tell you flat out, there was a chief of police, Bernard Parks, and Bernard Parks was Black. And he was, you know, born and raised in Los Angeles. And he was a throwback to the old LAPD. So color isn't always a guarantee. And I look at Amata Tingarides, I look at you, Captain McRaney, you're amazing. She's amazing. But color's not a guarantee.
I want to note, I did a ride-along in the community story with Deputy Chief Tingarides. It hasn't aired yet, but we've got a two-part story that I've worked on, even going into Watts Nickerson Gardens with her on that. So we will be having that story here. But Captain McRaney, do you want to respond?
Well, in many ways, I understand, you know, what's being said. And I think the whole point is that, you know, the police department is the most visible form of government, also often the easiest target. But I agree. I think that the problem is much bigger than just the police. You know, when I talk about these things, I know the history of, you know, what happened with the LAPD, what happened, you know, after the second Great Migration, when African Americans, you know, left the South and they went to Detroit, they went to Chicago, they came to LA, and I don't think LA was quite ready for that. And so how they dealt with members of the community, of the African American community at that time, was probably more aggressive. And I know over the years, you know, things today are not like what they were back then, but I know it's not perfect. And there is so much that we can do, again, together to get to a better place.
All right, I'd like to go back to Laura King, and I want to roll some footage that we have here at Fox 11 when I interviewed your father a couple times in the 1990s, and just give you a moment to reflect on your father. And this is a scene where he had taken up surfing. Who knew? Laura?
Yeah, he was actually an advocate swimmer. A lot of people don't know. He was on an actual swim team. He used to wake up 4:30 in the morning. He had a professional surfboard. He was on a team. And a lot of people don't know that, as well as skiing, as well as everything. He was like a super athletic person. So people are surprised by that, but, you know, that was him.
And that's our interview from about a year after the riots, or one of the anniversaries. Let's go ahead and come back to us here. And Laura, your father had that famous line of, "Can we all get along?" How do you live by that message, that question today?
It's sad that we're still asking the question. And so I proposed the question, can we be equal? Can we get along, and can we be equal? And obviously not here. And I agree with you, Captain, but I also think that cultural awareness should be involved, because it's like when you recruit new officers and you just throw them out to, for example, South Central, it's like they don't know the culture. So it's a lot of things that are going to be like, you know, of course, they're in a flight or flight situation too. So it's like, as well as mental evaluations. You know, once they're sworn in, they're evaluated, cool. But on a flip note, after they've been basically on duty, you turn into a different person because you're exposed to different things. I think that officers should definitely be mentally evaluated more. And I think that when they're reported, it should be taken serious. It shouldn't be thrown under, because they're human and they're not always going to have a good day. And what if they go out there on a bad day? This is the result. This is, you know, so I think we should take that. I think we should take this mental, speaking of months, this is mental health month.
It is. You're right.
take it serious. We
All
don't
right.
take it serious when we know the signs.
Tell you what, we're about out of time because I've got to hit another newscast here in Fox 11. So, Captain McRaney, can you give me a final thought, noting again this is the 1-week mark of the death of George Floyd and all the protests that we witnessed? Give me a final thought, and then I'll go to you, Dr. Leap.
Well, again, this is the perfect time. You know, they've called it. This is this is a movement. You know, not a moment in time, but a movement in time. And I agree, and I really welcome. Right now, I have an opportunity to be a part of that change, to make that change, and I'm looking to work with members of the community. I would love to work with members of this panel. Christine, maybe we can come back at some point in the future and talk about some of the things that we've done since this date later to make that change and get the conversation going. Ms. King will be a wonderful voice to share with this police department and the community, as would Dr. Lee.
Dr. Leap, I'm going to give you the last word here before I say goodbye to our panel tonight.
We must stand in memory to Rodney King and George Floyd. We must look to each other. We must all get along. We must listen to each other, and we must let the community lead the way. I'm grateful we're here together.
All right.